Well, my question is about the possibility of the independent movement making like inroads. If you really consider the environment that we're in, both the Democrats and Republican parties at this point are on the drive to austerity. And that's one thing that we really have to deal with. Considering that both are talking about cuts in Social Security, both are talking about workers' layoffs, both are talking about cuts to Medicare. In this context, right, what do you see as the possibility of the current independent movement making inroads in dealing with those current issues?
Wow, I was going to hand the microphone to you. Yeah.
Why don't you start?
I think that it's a huge question. I mean, what I point to is the fact that you have growing numbers of people who are self-identifying as independent in the nation. They're about 40% right now. Among African Americans, between 25 and 30%. And I think that they recognize that many more and more people are recognizing that these economic issues are very much tied to the political process and the political system, and that the parties are blocking democratic reform, small d. And that if we're going to deal with these economic issues, I'm not saying that if you went around and polled every independent they would say this, but I think the general sentiment is that you have to go after the kind of excessive partisanship which stifles our democracy and doesn't allow for innovative approaches to education, to healthcare, and the like.
Basically, the Democratic and Republican parties are parties of big business, collectively. And they operate in such a way so that they serve their own interests. And they are interested in their own sort of self-replenishing, or whatever the word is, perpetuation. And so many people are tired of the two-party system. They don't feel represented by it. The statistics on how people feel about the Congress, the rankings are very, very low. And so millions of Americans have dropped out of or never become a member of a party. The things that you're mentioning that are economic, even if they take the opposite sides of these things, the experience of living in this country is that nothing gets resolved. Everything is a fight. It's a fight. It's very partisan. Someone was telling me they hate watching the news because they always know what the one or the other person is going to say. It blocks creativity. It blocks development. And so unless ordinary people stand up all over this nation and say, hey guys, I'm sick of this crap, and I'm going to build something new. I'm going to participate in the creation of a democratic process so that you have a voice, so that we have a voice, so that we can comment and give shape to how it is that this country works. It just doesn't work. So a lot of people are anti-party. I'm a member of a party that's anti-party. Because what we want is for people to begin to make decisions together about the kind of world we want to live in. And the parties won't do it. The best people in those parties, I'm talking about the leadership, they won't and they can't do it. And look at how hard Obama's fighting his own party to be able to do the things that we as independents and independent-minded other party members and just all kinds of ordinary people gave him the power to do. So it's very, very, very problematic. That's why we need democracy, more of it.
There's another thing just interesting in terms, I was thinking about, you're talking about the anti-party, the Independence Party does describe itself as an anti-party party, and it is, the People's Party incidentally talks about itself as an anti-party party. So there's that another sort of connection there that I was thinking about, which is interesting, and that people recognize the limitations of parties. George Washington, going back to the founding of the nation, warned of two things in his farewell address. He warned of the excessiveness of the spirit of the parties, that political parties can become more interested with themselves, their self-perpetuation, than the interests of the republic, and also about being overly engaged in foreign entanglements. Very prescient comments, but there is a recognition of the limits of parties. And in terms of, this is also to go back to your question about the obstacles or things that I came across, political scientists are, well, they're biased, yes, and it's so party-centered. Actually, the students that I have the most hard time kind of reaching in my own teaching as a professor are the political science majors, because they're so trained to see things with parties that you can't have politics without parties. In fact, I did a seminar here this morning for this group of Schomburg junior scholars, and one of the students was just fighting me on this. I mean, she just was insistent that you can't have politics without parties. There's nothing in the Constitution about political parties, and yet two major parties have taken over the process. So that's an obstacle that I was facing in terms of conceptualizing. How do you talk about movement building without talking about parties? And that's, people make this distinction between the Colored Farmers Alliance and then as if the People's Party is a separate thing. No, they're part of an ongoing movement of people trying to figure out what to do.